Automation. What does it mean to automate something? We have things that we do typically. For example, we go to bed and we wake up in the morning. We can set an alarm clock, and an alarm clock is a way of kind of automating this clock to ring at a certain time. We can screw in a bunch of screws to a car, or we can build a factory that has robots that turn screws in an automated way, so we don't need to, work that hard, or have people work. That's a different political perspective. And we can automate a lot of things in Pro Tools. So right now, in a very quick introductory way, I'm going to teach you how to automate volume and panning. All right. This is not in a creative way or a specific application. This is just, let's see how it works and let's demonstrate that we can make it work. So I'm going to make a new mono audio instrument track, and you should do this as well. So I'm going to call it auto because it is not really part of the song. It is not part of the song. It is you showing me that you can do this thing. I'm going to insert expand for simplicity's sake. And I'm going to insert something that has a long sustain, something that will last as I draw a long note. So I'm just going to choose the very first soft lead. All right. Nothing that I'm too excited about. I'm going to go into my MIDI editor. I'm going to make sure that my pencil is on auto and that I'm not looking at any other stuff. And I'm going to draw from the very beginning of the song a 4-measure note on C3. And do I really care that you do it on C3? I really don't. But you can always test yourself. So here is my 4-measure note. This square down here, show or hide automation lanes. So there's actually a few different ways you can look at this, but we're going to look at it in the edit window via the automation lane. When you open up the automation lane, the first thing you see is velocity. These are those lollipops that show you or determine how hard the key of your keyboard or this note is being hit. All right, that is at full velocity. If I click on the word velocity, I see a whole bunch of other parameters, other things that I can manage in terms of this automation lane. The two that we're going to deal with right now are audio volume and audio panning. MIDI, all this MIDI stuff is really for outboard MIDI equipment, MIDI gear. So we're not going to do that. You do have pitch bend, and you do have some other controllers like your mod wheel and sustain and things like that. But we're just going to focus on audio volume and audio panning. So if I click on audio panning first, I see a line down the center of this lane with an L up top and an R on the bottom. So this sound right now is in the center of my headphones. I'll solo it. So if I look in the mix window, my pan knob is all the way centered. If I move that all the way to the left, you can see that the line has moved all the way to the left, as has the sound. I can also control this here and simply drag it to the right, and you can hear it off to the right. So if this thing were in the middle where it started again, basically, I'll just... you can also automate that movement so that it happens over the course of time. So I'm going to use my selector tool. And if you're using the smart tool, you can click on command, and you'll see that the hand turns into a little plus sign. And that allows you to put what's called an anchor point. So I just clicked here, and this anchor point allows me to click and drag that all the way up to the left. And I'll put in another one and I will drag it all the way to the right. And in fact, I will start my first one all the way to the right. And this is every 2 beats. I happen to be doing it every 2 beats. You can also click and hold on the pencil tool. And we used the line tool to put in our fast hi-hats. Now that works in the MIDI editor. There's also a triangle tool and a square tool and a random tool and all these different things. The triangle tool is kind of fun because it creates these triangular movements based on the grid value. So that's 16th notes. If I change my grid to half notes, which is what I drew here, technically speaking. Let's undo that. I'm sorry, I put it here. I can create the same exact look by just dragging my triangle tool. Okay, so what's going to actually happen? It's pretty quick, and in fact, what I'm going to do is erase some of these. And the way that you erase an anchor point is by clicking on Option, and then I'm going to have these actually sit longer in each ear. Okay, so what I want you to do is the same thing, and we're going to have a little panning, and then I'm going to hit the plus sign here. And I see velocity again, but what I want to see is volume. All right. And this time we're going to take our clip, and this is a good lesson. We're going to duplicate it. But I don't want this panning automation here. So I'm going to highlight the pieces, or, the parts of the automation lane and hit delete. So I can get rid of that automation information. I'll get rid of this one as well. You can also click Option and click on the individual dots. And I'm going to put this back into the center. Okay, and I did that by adding an automation point right next to it and just bringing it up close to the center. So now my sound is in the center. I want to play with automated volume. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the volume go up and down. So I'll start with it here, and I'll just drag this down over the course of a measure. I'll drag it up, but I don't want to go all the way up because that's plus 12. That's going to be really loud. So imagine that this is your fader, and we'll look at it in the mix window in a second. All right, so this is just going up and down and up and down. It's getting quieter. Now let's take a look at that in the mix window. So we're going to see, I'm going to hit return, so I'm down back at the beginning. So we're going to have an 8 measure section here. For the first measure, we're going to have some panning from right to left. In the second 8 measures, the first 8 measures panning, the second 8 measures, everything will be in the center, but we're going to see some volume automation. Here we go with the volume. Now, when would we use these things? Because right now this is not, creative in any way. Often we will, for a vocal track, that there are lines in the vocal that are quieter or louder, and we need to hear them. We need to control that volume from line to line. We will draw in volume automation. So this is not a vocal, but imagine that's volume. We can use the freehand tool and say, oh, you know what? We want this word to be louder. This section here needs to come down. All right, and that will be controlling the volume. Now again, you can do it with the pencil. You can also kind of drag this down. Now, my grid is in half notes, so it's not very precise. This is something that I would do in slip mode so that I can be completely in control of where I want these curves to happen. I don't want to be stuck to the grid, especially if I'm dealing with audio. So that is a use for volume automation. Very, very common, if not ubiquitous. You're always going to have volume automation on a track. And in terms of the panning, I actually really like to use automated panning as an effect, as you hear a voice or a backup vocal or a lead sound that kind of just moves between the ears from time to time. All right, automation.